So we have officially reached the bag talk portion of the offseason. I feel like it happens every single offseason and often is revolved around LeBron James. A lot of people say LeBron James does not have a bag. But before we get to LeBron, I want to talk about not just who has the deepest bag, but the way we look at it. And I don't want to make it seem like I'm above bag talk, right? I love it, right? We grew up watching basketball. We all wanted to play like these players in a certain way. Kobe Bryant is my favorite player of all time. Of course, I care about who has a deeper bag. But something that people love to say, they don't really say it anymore, but I feel like they used to say it a lot, like who would be the best pound for pound player. You know, when people said it a lot, they said it a lot when Iverson was in his prime. There's the famous Kobe quote, "We're all lucky that Iverson wasn't 6'6", or whatever he said, something like that, right? But that's the beautiful thing about basketball. It's not boxing. We're all on the same playing field. Because if these guys grew up playing with a certain height requirement or a certain weight requirement, they wouldn't be the same players. That's what makes a lot of players special and unique. The fact that they can do what they do at their size. So who am I to say Iverson wouldn't be one of the best players ever if he was 6'6"? He might be, but he wouldn't be Iverson. He wouldn't have the same game as Iverson. He probably wouldn't have one of the best handles of all time. He probably doesn't learn to be this crazy acrobatic finisher if he could just rise up and dunk on everybody. And I'm not trying to make it black and white. I'm not even saying Iverson would have been a worse player if he was taller. But he wouldn't have been Iverson. He wouldn't have been the same thing that made him special. Now, like I said, it's not black and white. It doesn't apply to every single player of all time. I think about Chris Paul. If he was 3 inches taller, could he probably see over the defense better? Would he have some more posters in his career? Probably, right? So I understand the concept of pound for pound. But in the NBA, to me, that doesn't really work. And we love to scale things, right? So when we get to a Kevin Durant, I don't get why it's so different for KD. And what I mean by that is you look at LeBron. People say LeBron's game is built on force and sheer will and athleticism, and he's this athletic freak and all that, which is all true to a certain extent. But LeBron gets placed in the category of like a Shaq or a Giannis or I don't know, Karl Malone even. And if you guys don't know, this is kind of in response to Austin Rivers saying that LeBron doesn't have half the bag as KD or something like that. I don't remember exactly word for word, but he was comparing LeBron to those type of players. And I don't agree with that, but if you want to do that, I'm wondering why we don't apply that to Kevin Durant. Why do we talk about Kevin Durant as if like he's just pure skill out there and has no physical advantages? He's 7 foot tall, can shoot over anybody, and that's not taken away from his greatness. That's a part of the conversation. But for whatever reason with KD, we act like that's not a part of it. Instead, we actually celebrate it and we kind of scale it to where we say KD has one of the deepest bags of all time. I don't believe that to be true. I know KD is not the same archetype as these players. Trust me, I understand that. But if we're going to hold size and athleticism against guys like Giannis and LeBron, why don't we hold it against the 7 foot guy? KD has a great handle for a 7 footer. KD doesn't have one of the best handles in the NBA. KD doesn't have the handle of a Paul George even, but he's 7 foot. And that's a part of the conversation. That's not a knock. That it is what it is. So the same way people ding LeBron and say, oh, he's just stronger than, yeah, that's part of it. That's a part of being great. And then it gets to like, what do we consider a bag? Because KD's post game is not gonna be at the level of other players. Because you know what KD does? Shoot over the top. That's what makes him great. Not saying he can't do more than that. I'm saying the bag is out of necessity. So KD in the post doesn't have to have as many counters as a Kobe. Are you really gonna tell me that KD on the block is more skilled, has more counters, has more moves than a Dirk? He doesn't. He doesn't have more moves on the block than Carmelo because he doesn't need to. And I don't want to make it seem like KD isn't one of the most skilled players of all time, because he is. For sure he is, but deepest bag, I really don't think so. But like I said before, we're not talking pound for pound. We're not talking pound for pound. We're talking about across the board. So we can't say, oh, if Paul George was 7 foot, he would be Kevin Durant. They are what they are, and Kevin Durant's size is a big part of the quote-unquote bag. The same way LeBron's strength is a big part of his bag, Kevin Durant being 7 foot is a big part of his bag. But I want to talk about LeBron because people talk about LeBron as if he stopped playing basketball in 2008. And I might come off like a hater because you guys don't agree with me, but I think LeBron has a deeper bag than Kevin Durant. I really believe that. Now, maybe you could say KD has the handle over LeBron, but if we're talking about post-game, if we're talking about finishing at the rim, either hand, if we're talking about getting up threes, if we're talking about the range, if we're talking about floaters, I think LeBron scores in more ways than Kevin Durant. And isn't that what a bag is? How many ways you can get your shot off, how many moves you have to get your shot off? To me, LeBron has more. Maybe I'm tripping. To me, LeBron has more. And maybe the disconnect is the finishing with LeBron. People don't want to give him the actual credit for the skill he has finishing. They just talk about it like he's just bullying his way to the rim, but the wrong-footed finishes, the left foot, right-handed finishes on the left side of the basket, is that not bag work? That game winner against the Raptors, like, why do we talk about Bron like he's not doing stuff like that? We should all be able to agree Kevin Durant has a better crossover and he has a better pull-up jumper. And the crossover is deadly. The double crossover, left to right, he has it right to left as well. It's amazing, but it doesn't really move me in terms of a bag. He has a better crossover than Kobe. Do I think he has a better bag than Kobe? Absolutely not. And ultimately, it doesn't matter. If you feel like Kevin Durant has a better bag than LeBron, sure, I'm not really gonna try to convince you. Otherwise, I'm just giving you my opinion. Kevin Durant has a bag. Kevin Durant has a great crossover. Kevin Durant has a great post fade. But the floaters, the wrong-footed lays, the half-court threes, the post hooks, the counters in the post, give me Bron. Give me Bron. Does it look as aesthetically pleasing as Kevin Durant? No. But who has more in their actual arsenal to use? I think it's Bron. But like I said earlier, it doesn't really matter. You know who I think has a crazy bag? CJ McCollum. And nobody cares. And maybe where the disconnect is for me is I really value the footwork in the post. Again, something that Kevin Durant doesn't really have to rely upon when you can just shoot over anybody guarding you. And unlike a Dirk, who I'm not going to say didn't have smaller players guarding him as well, but there were usually bigs on a Dirk, because Kevin Durant does have a very, very good handle for someone his size. So prime KD, you couldn't really put a power forward on him because the handle was too good. He'd obviously get around him, right? Kevin Durant is a matchup nightmare. A lot of that is due to the physical gifts he has, which we don't hold against him, but we hold against Bron. Bron can't be stronger than everyone, or he has no bag, but Kevin Durant could just be 7 foot shooting over anybody, and it's the most skill it's the deepest bag you've ever seen. There's no way you believe that watching Kevin Durant. That wouldn't even make sense for a Kevin Durant. There's no reason that Kevin Durant should have a bag of a Kyrie. What are you doing? Just shoot the ball. He has no reason to have as many counters in the post as a Kobe. There's a reason he's one of the most efficient players of all time, because he gets to his spots. It's easy. He rises up. He's extremely skilled. He's also 7 foot, and that's fine. Like I said earlier, the beautiful thing about basketball is it's not pound for pound rankings. They all got to figure out what works for them, what's the best way they can utilize their skill sets, what physical advantages they have, and to act like Kevin Durant doesn't have a clear, obvious physical advantage is kind of weird to me. It's kind of weird to me when we get into this bag discussion, and I'm gonna leave it on this because I made a video about this before. All of this kind of started on Twitter when someone pointed out that Kevin Durant has not led his team in field goal attempts since 2018, and I don't want to take too much from that. And this is kind of a whole different conversation, but I dropped a video a couple, maybe months ago at this point, titled "Efficiency is Overrated." And I think this is kind of something that lends to that, because Kevin Durant, maybe greatest scorer of all time, not leading your team in field goal attempts kind of says something about him, kind of says something about him not going and getting it, right? Because he's not a LeBron. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna dial it back and I'm gonna be the best passer on the court as well. If you are one of the greatest scorers of all time, you usually have an obligation to your team to figure out how to score. And it's not like he's not scoring, right? He's doing it extremely efficiently, right? The percentages are ridiculous, but sometimes you need to go out there and will buckets with your bag, with no space on the court, being double teamed, having to dribble through traffic and get a shot off. And maybe that harms your efficiency, but that's kind of your obligation when you're this deepest bag ever, greatest scorer ever. You gotta go score, you gotta get shots on the board. That's your job, right? And I'm not trying to limit him to that, but again, it's not like a LeBron. It's not like, okay, I'm gonna take a step back because I am one of the greatest passers of all time. You're greatest scorer of all time. Sometimes you gotta go score in ways that don't look pretty, in ways that the guys with the deepest bags do. So yeah, go watch that video if you want to hear me talk more about the whole efficiency conversation. I talk about guys like Kobe, guys like Westbrook, guys like Iverson, even talk about some bigs. I think it's a pretty good video. Obviously, I'm biased there. But you don't have to go as far as me and extrapolate a negative from the lack of field goal attempts. But I don't view it as a positive in any way, really. Unless you're speaking to Kevin Durant as a second option, which is not something I want to talk about. But unless you're doing that, the idea of my best player, the greatest scorer ever, the most efficient scorer ever, but he's not getting up the shots, he's not getting up threes, he's not really creating with the deepest bag in NBA history, greatest scorer in NBA history type of moves that you would think. No, it's just a simple left-right pull-up midi, and that works for him every time. A simple give me the ball in the post, I'm gonna shoot over every time. But going out there, getting difficult buckets, dribbling through traffic, multiple counters, double team, like, we don't really see that from KD. If you are this crazy, elite, efficient, greatest scorer of all time, which he is in that conversation, I know it seems like I'm being extremely negative toward KD, but if you are that, what do you think the defense wants? You think the defense wants you to not shoot the ball? Nah, you gotta go, like, there have probably been a lot of times in KD's career where he should have probably shot the ball more. And whether that's because of a lack of counters or a mindset, whatever you want to call it, I don't want to view that as a positive that he didn't shoot more, because he probably should have shot more on several occasions. But I'm gonna leave it there. I know I'm gonna get some hate for this video. People are gonna say I don't know what I'm talking about, I don't know ball, I'm an idiot, who am I to question? People are gonna say all that. If you believe Kevin Durant is the greatest scorer of all time, I think there's a valid argument for that. To me, that is a different conversation, because when we say that, we got to acknowledge the guy is 7 foot. Extremely skilled for a 7-footer, deep bag for a 7-footer, but why can't we acknowledge that advantage? 7-footer being guarded by a majority of guys that are 5 inches shorter than him, that's a clear advantage. Same way LeBron being stronger than everyone guarding him is a clear advantage, right? So that's what I'm saying. This isn't pound for pound. No one's saying if Kevin Durant was 6'6", this wouldn't be a topic. So again, if you want to call Kevin Durant the greatest scorer of all time, I disagree with that for a lot of the bag reasons, right? I kind of disagree with it because I don't think the bag is as crazy as y'all think, but just numbers-wise, efficiency-wise, points-wise, like if you want to call Kevin Durant that, it's completely fair. But when we start talking about greatest bags of all time, what you are really saying is Kevin Durant has the best handle you've ever seen from a player 6'10" and above. That's all you're really saying. And then we don't even have time to get into the conversation about how having a handle is different than having a crossover. We don't got to talk about that right now, but let me know in the comments down below. Tell me I'm an idiot. Tell me I don't know ball. Let me know all that in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. It will mean the world to me. I'm out. Peace.